This is Sawyer Robertson, and you're listening to the Bearcast on SicEm365.com.
Welcome into the Bearcast on SicEm365.com, brought to you by WellMed Medical Management. Today, I am here with Colt Barber. Colt, we're going to be talking about the defensive side of the football. We already wrapped up the offensive side heading into fall camp. Now it's time to preview the defense, which is the spot where we are all kind of just up in the air about what this defense could be. I think there's some intriguing pieces, and I think there's been intriguing news and notes that we've heard throughout the spring and at Big 12 Media Days. But I do think there's still some question marks there surrounding this defensive side of the football, which honestly hasn't been performing at the level it's needed to since the 2021 season. And so this year kind of becomes that year where last year we saw the offense, take that big step. Now, is this an opportunity for Baylor's defense to take that step with all the changes they've made from the coaching staff to the personnel? We'll see on that, but kind of just what's your general thoughts on the defense just right now as we're kind of getting ready for fall camp to ramp up?
Yeah, I always like using like what we learn about Baylor in previous years, and so much of the 2024 defense reminded me of the 2018 defense under Matt Rule, and it was they created turnovers, they created disruptive plays in 2018, but they gave up big plays, they gave up points, they gave up yards, and that just reminded me so much of the 24 defense. It was like they would flash and that you saw the playmakers, but then it would be breakdown, big play, penalty, something that derailed it. And obviously there was a lot of guys that cycled off. You lose Matt Jones, you lose all of your edge production for the most part. You lose some guys on the defensive front. And there's just so much turnover that it's hard to project that. But I think Dave Aranda's quote in Big 12 Media Days was kind of like, we were just filling out last spring and last fall with the defense. Did we know what we were doing? I don't know. This year's completely different. We know what we're doing. We know what we're going out there to execute. And I think that gives me those 2018 to 2019 vibes about this team is they take that next step. We saw the disruptiveness that team had last year. And now Steve Linton's gone. Matt Jones is gone. But you do have key pieces coming back. And I think that it gives me hope. But it's also still that cautious, like, hey, the last 2022, 23, and 24, the defense hasn't been that good. Can this defense return to what it was in 21? And truly, even 2020 wasn't a bad defense. They played a lot of overtime games that year, but they haven't had that 2021 type of season since that year. Can this team be that? I mean, we're going to see. We're going to find out. I think there's potential for it to be, so we'll see.
I think this is a year where they really need some roster turnover, and they got it. And this is not to say that some of the guys they lost weren't good, because I think Steve Linton was good. I think Garmin Randolph was good. Matt Jones had his best season last year of his entire career. You had some older guys that have been around the block for a really long time. Devin Lemire had been a starter for 3 straight years. Like, you had all these guys, but I think in general, this team really needed a bit of a reshuffling. And I think they got that this offseason with some of the pieces that they've brought in. There's some positions that I am really, really excited about. And then there's some positions where I have quite a bit of fear about what it's going to look like. And will the pieces that they're bringing in actually be clear upgrades? Will the scheme change with Paul Gonzalez coming in to help with the secondary? Will that help patch some of the problems that they had from a year ago? We'll see on that. I think that that's still a question mark, but let's just talk kind of going into this discussion. What's your biggest question mark, if you had one, about the defense going into fall camp? Real quick, Sawyer Robertson has something to remind you about.
Want the latest information about your favorite team? Try out SicEm 365 premium content the next 3 months for just $5 by clicking the link below.
And now back to the Bearcast. What's your biggest question mark, if you had one, about the defense going into fall camp?
I mean, are we crazy just not to say safety? I mean, like that's the question mark for me. I think that's the double up of what do you have on the roster, what do you have as potential on the roster, and then last year just wasn't good. And Devin Bobby emerged late, so that gives you that, okay, there's potential there. Like he kind of showed what everyone thought he could be. So that solidifies a little bit, but then you lose Devin Turner to injury, who is supposed to be that thumper in the middle, the guy that was a proven Big Ten player. He's still on the roster, fortunately, should play for him next year. as long as he comes back from his injury. But his safety, but I think at the same time, like cornerback, I think there's question marks, but I feel like the talent's there. I think that there's like Caden Jenkins is one of those guys that had a good freshman year with holes. Last year, he kind of took a step back. Hopefully, he's a guy that kind of gets back out of that sophomore slump. But everything goes back to safety for me. I think if you can play defensively with safeties that are feared by opponents, that makes you much better for your whole defense. And I don't know what this defense has in safety. I mean, you lost Devin, but you also lose a Corey Gordon who, he was kind of your playmaker back there last year in a lot of respects. Behind the line of scrimmage at times, he had interceptions. He was kind of that physical guy. You lose him, he transfers to Louisville. Not that I think he was great, but it is a guy that he could have built on from last season. So I think it's safety for me. And truly, I mean, there's new pieces in different spots, but I feel pretty comfortable with a lot of these positions besides safety.
I'm getting there on the defensive side with feeling good. I think there's some depth problems at a few positions, but I think in general, you're right. I mean, the cornerback spot seems like it's going to take a step forward if guys improve and Paul Gonzalez comes in and does what he did at TCU. I think you have some hope there, but yeah, I mean, it's undoubtedly the safety position. I do lump the star position in with safety, just to be clear
absolutely.
on that. And I know you do as well. So I just wanted to bring that up for anyone who's listening. The star is absolutely part of that. And I think the star position has been a pretty big problem ever since Jalen Petrie left. I mean, you look around at some of the names that Baylor's been playing there, and it's kind of like, man, some moments here and there, but never consistency. The 2023 season was just a complete letdown at the star position. It cost them a lot that year. So this year you're looking at, probably Carl Williams and DJ Coleman. I think Kendrick Simpkins will somewhat fit in there as kind of the third option. But then I also think Baylor can get a little creative there. And that's something we'll talk about here in a little bit with their linebackers potentially playing star as well. Or I guess I should say a hybrid part of star, which we saw last year.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that here in a minute. I think safety wise, when you look at deep safety, losing Devin Turner was massive. And I know that Tyler Turner has been talked about a lot, and I really liked Tyler Turner when he was coming out of high school. But Devin Turner was the starter basically the moment he arrived on campus. He was going to start for them. He won that job basically immediately. He was becoming a leader. He was becoming a guy who, in my eyes, was actually going to be their best secondary player. And I think fairly easily as well with kind of what he showed, how he's played at Northwestern. I think he fit their scheme really well. Very intelligent defender and someone that they're going to be missing because of that, football IQ, because of the reps, because of the experience. They're going to miss him a lot. I don't think he's one that you can just replace really easily. Now, with Turner, you have a lot of talent, and I think that's very intriguing to have a guy as talented as him. He just hasn't played a lot of football at the college level. So you're kind of asking him to be a first-year starter and be really good and be really productive, because you look behind him and Devin Bobby, and you just have a bunch of unknowns. I actually think if anyone were to get hurt there, I think Carl Williams would probably be the guy who actually becomes the starter at deep safety, and then you play DJ Coleman at star is how I view it at the moment. Because you look at the other guys, it's Micah Gifford, who moved from wide receiver to safety, who we've heard good things about, but again, hasn't played that very much. Chris Wokema, another young guy who hasn't played a lot. The depth there is just pretty scary once you kind of get away from Devin Bobby and Tyler Turner, and then Tyler Turner hasn't played a lot of football. So I have a lot of question marks there with the depth.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the reason we're talking about it. And you talk about Tyler Turner versus Devin Turner. One's a redshirt senior, one's a redshirt sophomore. One's played a lot of football for Big Ten, for a Big Ten school. Tyler comes, he was at Oregon, but hasn't played. I mean, very minimally. And so it's a concern, and it's unfortunate because it's one of those positions like you highlighted it in the transfer portal, you bring it, you have success, you get them a big recruiting battle to get them back into Texas. A Texas kid goes to Northwestern, has a great career there, comes home, you get him, pay him money through revenue share, NIL, and then he gets hurt. That's the reality of what we're dealing with now, and it's unfortunate. And I do want to talk about Kendrick Simpkins, because this is a guy that he's going to play star. He's a guy that could have easily, they said, hey, we don't have a spot for you. But they brought him back. And he was hurt a lot last year. He's able to get that year back. And I don't think that was unintentional. Like, I think there was I I think there was some optimism about his potential, and he's kind of that X factor to me, because if he can become a guy that's ready to play at star, if it's 60% of the snaps, I don't know if he is that or will be that, but then that frees up so much for you with the Carl Williams being able to move back. We don't know that that's going to happen, but he's kind of that X factor for me, that if they need help at safety, that he becomes a guy that's reliable at star. That's not really his skill set. We're talking about, Phoenix Jackson potentially playing that star position a little bit, or one of those linebackers moving into those roles in the key situations. But Kendrick Simpians is that guy that there was a reason they brought him back this year. And does that come to fruition? I don't know that, but maybe it does. And that could be that, you're not replacing Devin Turner, but it gives you the best opportunity to replace him if he can play snaps. And maybe he ultimately ends up being a guy that's playing 25% of the snaps, playing on special teams. But it's hard to believe that they not wasted a year on him when they could have brought in someone else. But he's still there. And he was brought in 2 years ago with a lot of, they were excited about him before he got injured early on in the season. So I'm anxious to see him. And I think he's kind of that guy that not forgotten, but is in that room that could make an impact.
Interesting. Because I do view DJ Coleman as the guy who would be the guy who, if he took a big step, then maybe Carl Williams could move back to deep safety like we saw against LSU. Because that's how they started. DJ Coleman was their starter at star, and Carl Williams played field safety for the defense.
Was Kendrick available? I don't remember if he was in that game. He wasn't. Play or not.
No, he was done for the year.
Yeah, so believe me, I love DJ Coleman. I wish he's a guy that I wish you could have redshirted the same way I go back to a lot of these guys in the secondary. You wish you could redshirt some of these guys early on and they're sophomores instead of juniors. DJ's a guy I liked a lot. Physically incredible. I hate these guys having to move around so much. That frustrates me more than a lot of things. I wish DJ could find his spot. And not that I'm not taking away from what you're saying. I think he has that potential to play star. He's just had to move around so much in his career out of necessity. I think there's potential for guys like that. One of those guys solidifying a starting spot creates flexibility everywhere else. If it's Kendrick, or if it's DJ, or if it's Carl, being able to say, hey, this is my spot and this is only my spot. No one else is coming for it. And then they stay healthy. Then that creates a lot of flexibility in the secondary.
Right. And I think DJ's biggest role, if he was playing star, is that he's much better in coverage than Kendrick. Yeah. I think Kendrick's big role would be if you want to use him as a blitzer and just get another blitzer on the field, because that's where Kendrick really thrived, was getting after the quarterback at Western Kentucky, not so much in coverage. And so that's where DJ Coleman comes in. I'm pretty excited about DJ. I think he makes me excited because I think this is where he should have been playing the entire time. Exactly. And he was forced to have to play a position that I just don't think he was ever fit for. And now he gets to play star and be more physical and be more closer to the line of scrimmage and guard tight ends, which I think he can do probably better than anyone except maybe Carl, because Carl's got really good speed and that ability, that quickness to guard not only tight ends, but also slot guys at a very high level. It's going to be very interesting. That's where I have concerns. How's that going to shape up? Where are these guys going to be playing when we go out there on Wednesday? Are we going to see some movement, even though we heard that there wasn't going to be a lot of movement at Big 12 Media Days? Yeah, we'll see on that kind of with that position. While we're talking about the star, I do want to mention the linebacker position, because I think that there is some room for Baylor to be playing with 3 linebackers at a time. Yeah. And that could be something that changes some things as well for how we're looking at this depth chart and kind of how they're going to scheme around some things. So in the summer, Travion Barnes came back, the transfer from FIU. He did not play in the spring. He was dealing with an injury, had to come back from that injury. He's been there in the summer. He's probably going to start at the Mike linebacker position. And then I think Keaton Thomas obviously is going to start at the Will linebacker position. That's how I see it playing out at the moment. But there's a guy who's been talked about a lot, who was another transfer, and that's Phoenix Jackson. And Phoenix came from Fresno State. He's a guy who's a really good blitzer, has received a lot of praise from Dave Aranda, a guy that I think they're expecting to make a massive impact, play a ton early on, and just be a difference maker for them. Now, is that in a role where he and Travion Barnes are switching off a lot? Or is it a case where, can they play all 3 linebackers at the same time, which I know seems unprecedented and seems weird to some people. But if you look to what happened last year, Baylor played Ra Dilworth and Caleb Parker at the star position, which technically they called a different name just because it wasn't specifically star, but for
right.
playing against the run specifically and getting a bigger body on the field, they played those two guys quite a bit. And that's the role that I can see Phoenix Jackson or maybe true freshman Caleb Burns playing as well. I can see both of those guys with their kind of body types and frames potentially coming in and being a third linebacker on the field while also obviously providing a ton of depth at the linebacker position.
Yeah, I mean that's so Phoenix Jackson, and going to Pro Football Focus grades, for the first time last year played a lot in coverage. 255 snaps in coverage, had a 79.7 grade. He had 3 sacks, but in coverage you're playing 255 snaps. That's a lot of snaps for a linebacker to play that. Travion Barnes, 304 covered snaps in coverage, 79.7 grade. And you go back to Keaton, which different leagues, tested differently, but Keaton played 357 snaps in coverage with a 64.5 grade. So I think you are where Matt Jones was a weakness in coverage for all the things he did well. They've completely gone, okay, all right, screw that. We're not getting burned in these situations as much. We recruited. We're going to recruit to help us in these areas, and that's what they did. And I think Phoenix Jackson is one of those. To me, I think he's the one that's going to be highlighted in those situations. I think that they started it last year of saying, let's make this third linebacker position. We don't have to take them off the field. We can play them. And it's a star, but you also still have your star position. And it's just creating these packages around these guys. If it's Travion, it's not going to be Travion. To me, it's not going to be Travion. I think he's solidified where he's going to play, even though he didn't play in the spring. I think you know what you're getting from Keaton, even though I think he could do some of this in star. So Phoenix Jackson is that one. Do you play with 3 linebackers and a star? Does the star come off the field? That's really exciting to see what they're going to do with this. And I think you give Dave Aranda some of this, kick in the butt of like, let's figure this out. Like he mentioned it. His old schemes are catching up to him now. We're going to change some things up. You feel like that. So what does he have up his sleeve that's going to change? I mean, you have Phoenix Jackson. I don't know what he's going to be listed at on the roster, but you have Phoenix Jackson, who's a true linebacker, has that ability in rush defense and in coverage. Played more in coverage than he did in rush defense, but makes a lot of plays, sacking the quarterback, hitting the quarterback and stuff. He could give you that flexibility that star position isn't. It's needed, but maybe not as much as it used to be in the Dave Aranda defense.
Yeah, potentially. I just think everything that we've heard this offseason, it's hard to ignore the noise that has been building with Phoenix. And because of that, it's just one of those things where it's like, you got to figure out a way to get this guy on the field. I mean, that's kind of what I've been trying to look at. How do you get him on the field? And I think it would make a lot of sense if he was at star and then Carl Williams was at field safety. I think for a lot of packages, that would make a lot of sense to me for them to do that. And so I'm just curious. I think this is also one of those situations where you can blitz Phoenix, you can blitz Keaton Thomas, and you still feel good about what Travion Barnes is going to bring in coverage as well if you drop him, or you can blitz
you don't know who's
multiple
coming.
levels. Yeah, and that is exactly what Dave Aranda wants. That is like to a T what he wants from his defense. He wants a defensive line that holds blocks, and he wants linebackers who are attacking and getting after the quarterback. And that's exactly what these 3 guys bring to the table. There's more guys as well. Caleb Burns, the true freshman, very excited about what he could bring to the table as a 4-star prospect. KB Winston, another freshman who I know the staff is very, very high on. Good off seasons I've heard from Kylan Reed specifically as a depth piece. And Dave Aranda said this is the best linebacker core he's ever had, which is super interesting to me and something that should raise everyone's eyebrows and get their ears up as to how dominant could this linebacker group be, how effective and how much havoc could they bring to the table. I think they're expecting them to be very, very good. And while I mentioned that, I know I'm giving a lot of credit to Dave Aranda, but also a shout out to Jamar Chaney and how he's kind of built this linebacker core as well from a recruiting standpoint. It's been massive for this group to develop and bring in this kind of talent. I think they're very, very talented at linebacker, like extremely. And from an NFL draft standpoint, one of the better groups they've had, because I think KT Thomas is a pro, and I think Travion Barnes and Phoenix Jackson could prove that they are pros as well.
Yeah, if you've hung out this long on this podcast, you're going to get a nugget here. But I remember when Travion Barnes was the whole saga with his recruitment. He thought he was committed, never announced it, thought he was going to Auburn, backed off, whatever happened. And then I can't remember the exact timeline, but it was like one of them committed. Phoenix Jackson, I guess, announced publicly. First. And then they were like, we are you thought they were done, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, never mind. We're going to take both of these guys because they're both real. We see both of them as being very good players, and now here we are, 7 months, 8 months later, saying both of these guys need to be on the field with Keaton Thomas, and both of these guys are seniors. They both need to play. I like for Dave Aranda to say that one, not just only for this team, this could be the best position group, but that he's ever coached. Like I still like, is that true? Like that's LSU, man. Like you were recruiting and playing some really good linebackers, but I think there's something to that because they love Keaton Thomas. They loved him last year. He's better than Terrell Bernard loved him before last season in his long-term progression. We know how good Terrell Bernard was at Baylor and how he has done in the NFL. But now you're saying there's two other guys that are kind of in that equal conversation. Maybe so. Maybe like he truly feels that way and he wants to play with those linebackers. If you look through his best defenses, Dave Aranda's best defenses, it's if his linebackers are really good, his defenses are really good. And that excites me about this particular team because I love Matt Jones. I think he got so much heat before last year. I think he was so much better than what people really realized up until, and then he proved it last year. But I think what they have in this room now, athletically, mentality, ability from playing in coverage, this is exactly what Dave Aranda wants with his high end depth, his older guys, and then he's going to build behind it for the future.
We're going to talk about this at another position as well, but it's very clear that Baylor kind of pivoted from what they had been doing. And again, not a slight to Matt Jones, not a slight to Dylan Doyle, but they were playing with very heavy Mike linebackers, like big Mike linebackers, and not the most athletic when you get them in testing situations or NFL draft situations. Both awesome players, but they just want a different type. It very much seems that way. They want guys who are maybe more solid in coverage, more athletic when it comes to testing. I think that's an important thing to look at when you look at, where did they think they were maybe a little bit weak last year or weak for the past few years that they could improve upon? I think that's an area that is very important to address. The other area where I think we've seen a huge change in how they're kind of looking at the position is the edge spot. And they made a lot of changes this offseason, brought in multiple transfers, Amarian Winston out of Oregon, Matthew Fobbs-White out of Tulane, Jalen Jones out of UTEP. They've been looking around at a lot of different guys to try to add to this room and a lot of different body types, which again is very different from what they had even last year. Steve Linton and Garmin Randolph were both very tall, long, athletic, kind of not the best pass rushers, kind of inconsistent at times with their play and how good they were going to be from game to game. And so this year they shifted it and they went and got Amarian Winston, who kind of fills that role of being a consistent, stop the run, high upside as a pass rusher because of his athleticism. But then they brought in Matthew Fobbs-White, who is not big at all. I mean, he is tiny in comparison to those guys, but he's so fast. And you know what you're getting from him as far as getting after the quarterback. You know that if that Colorado situation happened and he was on the field, it would not have happened because of his athleticism, his speed from the back end, ability to chase down the quarterback. I find that extremely interesting. They also brought in Kamarian Morgan, who again kind of fits that mold of a Marion Winston, who you're hoping can be an every down guy at some point. But this year, maybe more of a run stopper, more of a pass rusher immediately. So we'll see. But a lot of changes there in my eyes. And Matthew Fobbs-White is kind of the guy that I've circled because of how different he is than what Baylor has brought in the past under Dave Aranda at the edge spot.
Yeah, that position, along with Starr, is kind of what Dave Aranda was known for. And I think last year with Steve Linton, we talked about this earlier, but like when Linton was on the field, he was a force. He could make plays in the run game. He could make plays rushing the passer. The issue was he didn't play every game for suspension or for injury or whatever. I think he played 9 games last year. So it's like, that was great. It was great to have him on the field, but then he wasn't on the field all the time. So that was like, okay, let's get that and then have him play 13, 14 games. These guys are the ones that you feel like are going to be that, as long as, barring a significant injury or something. But we are hopefully seeing that come to fruition of let's be consistent in these positions with what we have. And I'm trying to think back. I mean, and this sounds bad, but like, who were those guys before Steve Linton? I mean, Garmin was there, but
Jordan, William Bradley King. It's just
some. I mean, respectfully, they haven't had this type of potential at this position. The athletic ability, and you look at Matthew Fobbs-White was a guy they loved out of high school and decided to pass on. He goes to Tulane, shows out at Tulane, and said, okay, come on, we want you back now that you're in the portal. And they are able to see film on him, and now he's there. Winston was a guy that Matt Pallage knew at Oregon. I think there's something to that. I think it's the same thing as you talk about Trevin Ma'ai last year and him developing into what everyone thought he would be. It took him a little while, but he got there. There's those connections that are kind of coming into play. And I think that this is a position that really means something to them. They are, I mean, Tyler Turner was a guy at safety they knew. Devin Turner they knew a little bit. But like this position, it seems like they're going back and saying, let's go back and bring in some DNA that we know and what they're going to provide. And I'm excited about this position. Like I think there's that fear of the unknown, but I think there's a potential for it to be really good as well.
I agree. I think there's a lot of upside. Amarian Winston just looks the part. I mean, when people see him on that first game against Auburn, people are going to be like, oh my gosh, that guy looks like a dude. Matthew Fobbs-White will not look like a dude, but when the ball's snapped, I think he's going to be very impactful. He's going to be their best pass rusher in my eyes of this edge group. Amarian Winston will give them more, I think, of solid play, right? The ability to stop the run and, get after the quarterback some, but give them more consistency in that regard. And then, like we mentioned, the depth pieces, Jalen Jones coming in from UTEP, Kamarian Morgan, the 4-star prospect out of South Oak Cliff. A lot of rave reviews about him. Very excited to see him on the field. And then, of course, Kyler Jordan, who has played this position a ton and has played a lot of football. And so he gives them that veteran floor that they really need, I think, to round out the room. Okay, finally, let's talk about the defensive line really quick. I think this group is going to probably be determined by how good the nose tackle position is, which we probably say every single year. But I think this year they have the best shot at actually having I don't know about elite nose tackle play, but really, really good nose tackle play. When you look at Adonis Frylu out of Tulane, he came in this summer, just small, but an absolute just immovable object in the middle. He's not super tall, but he is not going to be moved very easily. He fits exactly what they need. And then Samu Taumanu Pepe out of Texas A&M, who transferred in, got hurt for the spring, so didn't go through spring ball, but he is absolutely massive. The closest thing Baylor's had to Apu since 2022, I guess. And so he gives them that size and that kind of just talent, right? That talent to potentially be great. You got those guys. You got Cooper Lands. You got Jackie Marshall. You got Devontae Tizino, who no one wants to talk about, I think, except for me, he's very good. And I think everyone forgot about him last year. And you mentioned Steve Linton as a guy, man, when he played, they were really good. When Devontae Tizino played after his injury, they were pretty dang good up front for the most part as well. He definitely changed some things for them. Kind of a forgotten piece, but that's kind of the group that I look at as those 5 being kind of the biggest contributors, and then DK Kalu kind of rounding out the group as that 6th guy.
Yeah, and this is a big, heavy group. And I think top to bottom, I think we're going to realize that as we start getting these official rosters out and what they have. But Samu is going to be heavy. I don't know what he's going to check in. And you mentioned size-wise, as closest to Apu as that they've had. But like Freelo from Louisiana Tech, or Tulane, he's kind of just like a nugget behind, man. Yes. Like he's going to be big too. And so I think he's kind of more like we might be a little inflating his weight where we're bringing some other guys down. But like I think that Baylor's going to have at least 2 nose tackles that are going to be impossible to move for the most part. And that is massive for this defense. I remember going into the Apu year and everybody being like, oh, he's just a big guy. He ain't going to, bro, that's what they want. Yeah. They want that nose tackle position. But then you throw in Jackson Blackwell. What's he going to be? 325, 330 as a freshman? Yeah. Like Tonga Loa, however you say his name. Screw it. I don't know. Last year he was listed at 330. And so you're going down this list of saying, okay, depth-wise, are they going to be able to keep the linebackers clean? If we're just talking about athletic ability and size, yes, absolutely. This team is going to be really big on the defensive line. And you're talking about, you mentioned Devontae Tezino being 294, 300 pounds, and that's small. And so like I think that we are not going to have Cooper Lands playing nose tackle anymore, and that's massive for this team.
Thank goodness.
Cooper Lands is a good football player playing out of position. He can be disruptive on the edges, but he's a guy that needed to get away. So I'm really excited about the defensive line because they're the F-150s. They're the F-250s, like Dave Randy used to say. And they don't need to be the Ferraris. Let's play like big work trucks, and I think this team has it.
Yeah, it's a big bummer that they lost Brendan Bett because he would have kind of just been the cherry on top for how good this group could be. But you lose him, and now you kind of look around. They got Alessandro Lorenzetti out of Michigan, who they're going to hope can play that role. Another guy who's right around 300 pounds. So it's a group that's very intriguing. I really like kind of when I did the kind of looking through how Baylor has played defensive linemen in the past. They have enough guys. As long as you don't have guys getting hurt, they have enough guys who can kind of absorb those high rep shares. So I'm excited about that group. All right, Colt, really quickly, prediction for this defense heading into fall camp. Where do you think they finish nationally? And kind of, I guess, in Big 12 play, kind of where you see them fitting in, just in your eyes.
Yeah, it's so tough, man. I mentioned this earlier about them. Last year, they showed so much the ability to get off the field on third downs. They didn't show the previous year. They improved so much. They had forced turnovers really late in the season. They started forcing more and more turnovers, disruptive plays. Now, do that. Be consistent. Don't give up big chunk plays when you're there to make plays. I think that's the next step for this defense. I'm not predicting anything outlandish. I mean, I'm gonna pull this up. Total defense, just raw statistics in the Big 12 last year. Baylor was 11th 12th against conference foes, 419, and that's in total yards. And you talk about yards per play, they were 10th. That's just raw stats. If they can push up towards the middle, right above that midway point with the offense they should have, I think they're sitting pretty good. And I think you start, collecting sacks, being disruptive, getting off the field on third downs. You kind of live with the chunk plays. I'm predicting that. I think that they'll be right up there. If there's 16 teams, I think they'll be right above that cut of the middle of the pack defense in terms of yards per play. And if they're living in that world the entire season against Auburn, SMU in that range, they're going to win some games. I think they can win 10 games. But this defense has to take a step. They have to get the ball back to their offense. You look at the 13, 14, 15 teams. Those teams were making plays, getting off the field on third down, and forcing turnovers. That made that offense even better. If this defense can do that, this offense gets even better. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be very intriguing. I think the biggest thing for me is if you want to win the Big 12, you're going to have a top 50 scoring defense. That just is what it is. That's how it was last year for the teams that were in it. That's how it has been for most years, not every year, but most years. You have to have a top 50 defense if you want to be an actual contender in the Big 12, and most likely a top 40 defense, to be honest, if you really want to be serious about it. I think Baylor can get around that top 50 mark. I really do. I think there's some signs that they could get there. I think there's some talent upgrades that they've been able to find and add. I think the shifts that they made with Paul Gonzalez coming in the secondary, I think that helps a lot. And if you are talking about a top 50 defense, and then you're talking about an offense that's right around top 15, you're a pretty scary football team. And you're a football team that can actually go out and potentially win the Big 12 and make the college football playoff. Okay, Colt. So that's it for today. We will talk again probably later this week as fall camp is now here. We'll probably have something for everyone on the premium side, maybe something on just YouTube as well. But be sure to check out Sikkim 365 Premium if you want all the content, the insider notes from camp, the views from the Brazos, which is live video of the practices. If you want insight from practice from Colt or I, you can get that on Sikkim 365 Premium. But for today, that's all. Thanks for listening. This has been the Bearcast on Sikkim365.com.
Join Sikkim 365 Premium on a $1 for 1 month trial to read our experts' notes and insights. Know about high school commits, off-season transfers, coaching staff changes, and so much more before the rest. Also, download the Sikkim 365 app on your iPhone today to get instant notifications of breaking news, read up on the latest inside info, easily interact with other Baylor fans on our forums, and get alerts for anything published by your favorite staff members.